Over the past 2 years, Path of Titans slowly but steadily grew in popularity and eventually became the most popular title in the dinosaur survival genre. Being across literally all gaming platforms and possessing around 15 to 20,000 daily users, this once obscure indie game surprisingly became the top dog in this particular scene, offering the largest dinosaur roster, a greatly designed map, a unique way of play, and extremely robust modding support. Path has proven over time that it has the vision and expertise necessary to provide players with a high quality experience. But of course, this is not a perfect game. Just like any other, POT has its own issues, design flaws, and poor executions. And today we are going to discuss one of the most prevalent and impactful problems the game to this day has to deal with. Path's most notorious critique, apart from being called an acorn collecting simulator, is the abhorrent balance when it comes to dinosaur matchups, with herbivores being claimed to be the main culprit due to their overly strong stats and abilities. Ever since multiplayer has been enabled, that's the case, becoming louder and louder the more herbivores the game releases. While it is easy to simplify the matter to a yes or no conclusion, my experience shows that this problem is a lot more complex than it appears on the surface. It is clear that herbivores being problematic is a common complaint from the community. However, I believe that although there is some truth to it, players are not observing the entire picture, and that leads to conclusions that don't reflect the main issue, which leads to suggestions that don't actually solve the problem. The major portion of this demographic are ex-IL players or people that play both games equally. This particular group is made mostly of IL veterans, dinosaur survival experts that invested hundreds or even thousands of hours of their free time into that game and now see Path as a better version of the former or just a different flavor of the same general gameplay experience. Either way, the IL had influence on the genre and of course the genre's community. That game built a standard due to its prolonged popularity, and those standards include everything: the good, the bad, and the ugly. And something that Legacy is very well known for, it's for its absurd carnivore bias. Now, before you start saying, "I can't believe it, Zach is defending poor balancing," hold on, I promise this will go somewhere. It is evident that those same standards naturally spread into Path's community since most of its player base, at least in the beginning, came from the IL. So players had the expectation that POT's matchups would work similarly to their previous game. An understandable reasoning to have. And obviously, that was not what happened. Herbivores were nowhere near as weak as in Legacy. They were, and still are, actually capable of not only defending themselves, but also defeating their designated predators, something that was way less frequent in the IL before Evrima. But players were so used to the opposite, not to mention that the internet in general always leans on the carnivore's favor anyway, that they would think Path is unbalanced, when in reality, the roster was actually pretty decent across the board statistically speaking. Now, was the game perfectly balanced all the time on every single patch? Of course not. That's an impossible achievement. Path did have issues on that front from time to time, just like the IL had. That's just part of a game's development. But blaming herbivore stats exclusively for it is simply not true. However, ironically, these people are actually right. Herbivores are unbalanced, but not in the way you might think. Let me explain. On an individual level, most dinosaurs have, to a degree of course, fair matchups with each other. There are some outliers, sure, but in most cases, they are considerably dependent on the player's skill and game knowledge. But the thing is that while this concept works the best on one-on-one scenarios, the more the numbers present on such interaction increase, the more volatile and inconsistent the results will be. And within that idea is where the true problem resides. I have to say that it took me some time to figure this out, and for everyone to understand my conclusion and how I got there, allow me to tell you a story of my personal experience as a basis for my thesis. I am mostly a Herbivore player. I enjoy playing as them because I really like being in conflicts where I'm outnumbered. But in Path, whenever I play as a Herbie, I wouldn't get attacked by practically anyone regardless of my dinosaur of choice. In some sessions I would spend hours and hours just standing in a hotspot, Green Valley, Grand Plains, Snake Gully, you name it, patiently waiting for a carnivore to hunt me down, and nothing. Not a single one would dare to attack me. And after this happening several times, I decided to observe other herbivores to see if they were experiencing the same thing. And unsurprisingly, they were. Some brave soul would give it a shot here and there, but the overwhelming majority of hunts that I spectated were carnivores hunting each other. So for some time I did think herbivores were too strong to the point that most people wouldn't even try to fight them. But then I noticed something. On Gondwa's hotspots, Herbie hunts were extremely rare, but whenever I would travel between hotspots, I would almost always be attacked on sight, no matter if I was solo, on a herd, small, mid or apex. More so, I would be picked up by all sorts of dinos, Latins, Metris, Allos, Sucos, Rexes, and that kept me thinking, well, that's a bit odd. There's clearly something influencing people to attack herds in some areas, but not in others. At first I thought it was simply the geographical layout of those zones. Perhaps hotspots were too open and didn't let carny players set proper ambushes. And while that may be a contributor to the matter, it wasn't the main reason, because I would still be attacked in open areas that were not hotspots. So, what is it? To reach the answer I was looking for, I had to experience it for myself, so I put Herbies aside and spent a couple of weeks playing as a carnivore to find out what exactly was causing this strange phenomenon to happen. And let me tell you, I got my question answered. During this personal experiment, I found something quite interesting that I honestly wasn't expecting. During my numerous hunts, I discovered a distinct and yet subtle difference between hotspots and regular areas. Anywhere on the map, the fights would happen pretty normal. Sometimes I would win, other times I would lose, what's expected, no surprises or anything. But on popular locations, a specific circumstance would occur. Very often during my engagements, I noticed that random herbivores would enter the fight out of nowhere, forcing me to retreat or even be the cause of my death. Over time, this became such a frequent situation that I myself started to do exactly what I have been seeing as a Herbie all this time. I started hunting other carnivores only. And the moment I realized that, the answer was crystal clear. You see, those random herbivores were actually not random at all. They were members of the herd that just so happened to be further away from the chosen targets. But as a carnivore, I couldn't tell that they were part of the same group. Since Herbie mixpacking is so predominant regardless if it is official or community servers, whenever there's a large gathering of plant eaters, carny players have no way of telling who and how many members a herd has or how many herds there are even. You could spot 10 Herbies, all playing solo, and it would be almost impossible for us to know that without directly asking them. This is even worse on official servers since players can do whatever they want, meaning that even if those 10 people weren't in the herd, they could still potentially help each other. And that's the true advantage herbivores have. Knowledge. Carnivore players heavily hesitate in hunting them solely because they almost never know how many they are exactly hunting. That uncertainty gives plant eaters a massive upper hand, because they possess important knowledge that it's extremely difficult for their predators to obtain. That is why a lot of players believe that they are unbalanced. They try to hunt something and more often than not, they get overwhelmed because of a bunch of additional dinos suddenly enter the ring. I have seen this happen. This is a widespread issue. My solution is very simple. Provide players that information in a clear and direct way. For everyone, not just carnivores. Create a specific mode where players can see all dinos in the vicinity highlighted in different colors, so each herd or pack is represented by a specific color. It can be either through a scent system, a special vision toggle, whatever it is more adequate for path. But from my perspective, it is important for this particular kind of information to be available for people. And if that was the case, I believe that the community would find the game a lot more balanced, or at least more fair and consistent. But what do you guys think? Have you experienced this as well? Let me know in the comments below. A huge thank you to my Patreon supporters for supporting the channel and the content I create. If you wanna join the ranks, you can do so for only $1 a month, the link will be in the description. Don't forget to leave your thoughts and opinions down below, join our Discord server for memes and pillar stuff, and I hope to see you all next week.